buddy. We are here somewhere between space and time, bringing you another episode of All In, a Nintendo podcast, the weekly Nintendo variety show where each and every week, no shells left unturned, no point is left unearned. And we've got a big show to get into this week. And you know, there's a little bit of paradoxical stuff going on in more ways than one, but I do want to shout out, in keeping with this, the people who are hanging out with us live right now on youtube.com/allinpodcast, where we do the first segments of our show live on YouTube at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern every Friday. So hi, YouTube. Thank you very much for coming out in the past/future or whatever is going on. But you know who else we want to thank, Eric, at the very beginning of the show?
The absolute legends that allow our show to be made.
That's right. We want to thank the patrons, the lovely people at patreon.com/allinpodcast, starting with our golden banana bunch: Rob Yapel, Third Strongest Mole, Shano Baggins Ashton, Tim A, aka Neoprime33, aka Nintendo Dad number 4, Matt Shy Guy City Murray, Drew Agnew, Phelan Ward, Bill Tucker, Marcus O'Neill, Liam D, Solo Something, and Bowza. But, Eric, we can't forget about the Triforce tier. We want to thank Josh Vaughn, the godfather of Tingle Love Thursday, I guess, which is something that happened this week. He's like, I totally didn't forget.
You can't just do that.
Claim 2 days of the week.
No.
We want to thank John Datfast Cummins.
Has one.
Yeah, John Datfast Cummins from the Retrologic podcast, as well as On Topic Retro, the globe-trotting, jet-setting Nintendo hubbin' Sparky of the Nintendo Hub right here on YouTube. Adam Caparello /OctoRock1982. Octotalk just came back, by the way, so check him out here on YouTube and on Retro Groove, the Retro Groove podcast. Shy Guy, the other half of our Shy Guy mod squad. Danielina Hosa, Dan and Luma, and the legend himself.
You know what? As I sit here with my all-in mug, my piece of all-in merch, I realize this man may need his own mug, his own shirt, his own hoodie at the all-in store one day, and that is, of course, Uncle Randy.
That'd be kind of great. Let me know if y'all want an Uncle Randy. I could talk to him about that. Can we merchandise Uncle Randy?
That would be low-key amazing.
Let's see what Uncle Randy, if you want to have your own face on a shirt, maybe that should be a thing.
Just like the Uncle Randy emote just on a shirt.
Yeah, just his face. Shout outs to Bowza and iDrewby, Drew Agnew. They're both here in the chat. We just shouted them out. 2 of our patrons here watching us live. Hey guys, love you all very much.
Trying to see how their money's being spent.
Yeah, see where it's all going, right? See how the sausage gets made. But Eric, we also have got some reviews to shout out.
Yes!
Which is always fun, always great, always appreciated, and very free and easy to do. You can leave us 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, and Audible, just like Matt, aka Stormageddon from the Fun and Games podcast did on American iTunes. Matt says, phenomenal. The best Nintendo-focused podcast out there, a must listen. So thank you very much for that very kind review.
Thank you.
I'm going to be on there sometime in the future. I submitted a thing for their side quests series, so I think I'm going to be episode 210 or something like that, so look out for that, the Fun and Games podcast. And then we got a new anonymous Spotify review, which put us over a milestone, Eric, on Spotify. We have now hit 25 reviews on Spotify.
Yay! So
very, very cool. Thank you all so much to everybody who has left us a Spotify review. You can't drop words there, but we appreciate those reviews very, very much. It's a big milestone. Here's to 50. Let's get to 50 next. If you haven't left us a review on Spotify yet, just search us up real quick, All In Nintendo Podcast, and hit that 5 stars.
Super quick. The only thing better than podcast views is podcast reviews.
Oh, snap. But with all that being said, sir, what's been going on this week?
Well, between 3 games... that's basically been the tripod of my gaming week this week. I'll go ahead and shout out Fire Emblem Engage, which I have spent a ton more time in. I am thoroughly down the rabbit hole on that game at this point. Honestly, no clue where I am in terms of the story, you know, as far as how far I am into it, how much further I have to go. If I had to guess, I'd say maybe about halfway. But again, I really couldn't tell you.
You're just guessing, just guesswork at
Yeah,
that point, dude.
but there.
We talked about it on the last episode of the Nintendo Drive. Ryan Turford from Carpool joined us, and he's like, "Yeah, I put 50 hours into it in 10 days and beat it." So it took him 50 hours. So
Well, there's so much you could do. I've been going through a lot of the optional battles, the skirmishes, because in addition to just experience points and leveling up your characters, I, I got to get some more money. I got to get some more items and everything else. And I can't count necessarily on being able to get them through the main story. Each of the main story battles are all scripted encounters, of course. So I don't know exactly what I'm going to get when I'm going to get it. So I'm trying to, especially because this is my first playthrough of my first Fire Emblem game, I'm still trying to wrap my brain around a lot of the systems, a lot of the mechanics that Fire Emblem Engage has in play, which is a lot. There are a ton of different ways that you can augment and customize and refit each of your individual units. And I was actually under the assumption, and I guess maybe it's just this way for Advance Wars, which, by the way, I hope we finally get this year.
Shadow
I just
drop
thought
next
that
week, baby, it's gonna happen.
We'll see. We'll see. But I was kind of under the assumption that a lot of the individual units in Fire Emblem were just kind of faceless soldiers, that they were just either infantrymen or, you know, like the Pegasus soldiers, the cavalry, the shielded, armored soldiers, that they were all just kind of faceless characters, and there were only a couple named characters that you controlled on the battlefield at any given time. And maybe it's that way for some of the older games, I don't know. But I was very surprised to find out that every controllable unit in Fire Emblem Engage is their own actual named character with their own individual character abilities and personalities and relationship interactions that they can have with each of the other individual party members in the game. So lots of characters in your party, so much so that inevitably some characters that you probably really like are going to fall by the wayside, are going to wind up being level 7 while the rest of your people are, you know, getting maxed out at level 19, level 20 before you. And this is another thing that I wasn't even aware of. I guess class changing is a big mechanic in the Fire Emblem series, where your character gets to, you know, they can max out at level 20 of a certain class, and then you can either upgrade that class from like mage to magus, or, you know, like just next level mage, or you can actually switch their class to something else. And it has to do with proficiencies of like spears and axes and magic and all kinds of stuff. You can have these joint proficiencies. If you have a character that's proficient in multiple weapons, maybe they can become a special classification called a general or a griffin knight or something like that. In addition to a ton of other stuff. Obviously, they have the emblem rings is the big focus, the big mechanic of Fire Emblem Engage, which syncs up a character with a previous Fire Emblem hero of yore. I didn't realize this until I got about 10 hours into the game, but there are other rings that you can create. Each of the core rings representing one of the main characters from the series. You can actually use a currency in the game called bond fragments to create kind of lesser rings based off of characters from that main character's game.
Okay.
So, you know, you have Ike obviously is one of the big ones, and you can use these bond fragments to create lesser rings based on other characters from Radiant Dawn and Path of Radiance. So, and then you can equip those two characters before you get like before you get like all 12 of them in the story. You're going to have characters that don't have the main character rings equipped. So you can have these lesser rings. So there's just so much at play, and I'm really starting to dig it. For the first few chapters, I'm not going to lie, it felt kind of just you walk here, punch the guy standing next to you in the face. You walk here, punch the guy standing next to you in the face. But now the amount of variety, the amount of customization, and the amount of extra actions and different actions I can do, aside from just said punching people in the face, that's really starting to open up with a lot of the new abilities, the leveling up, and everything else that's going on. And it is quite the rabbit hole.
Nice. I'm glad you're enjoying it.
I am. I'm probably going to have to put, like Ryan said, I'm probably going to have to put another 20, 30 hours maybe into the game. I'm going to try to do that. I really want to try to do the review of that very, very soon. We'll see what happens. But there are a couple other games that I also have found myself playing this week. I actually played SpongeBob the Cosmic Shake a little bit.
Nice.
So we got access to that game. Thank you once again for the review code. We got access to that game. And I'm about 2 worlds in, and full disclosure, it is exactly the game I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty shallow 3D collectathon platformer with SpongeBob rapping. It doesn't look like it's going to be spectacular, but if you're a SpongeBob fan, I'm sure it's going to be something you enjoy. One of the things that is very noticeable is the rocket fast pace of the game. Like, you're constantly like, you start off going to Glove World or something. That's the whole big crux of the inciting incident of the game. You, as SpongeBob and Patrick, go to Glove World, and you think it's going to be this big thing, but no, that's just a reason for the cutscene for the inciting incident to happen. And then you just jump ahead like 3 hours later, and something else entirely is going on, and then something happens, and then you cut to something else, and then something else entirely is going on. And I'm literally just trying to keep up with everything that's happening. And then the gameplay starts, and you're like, go here, do this. Now go here, do this. Now go here, do this.
Yeah.
And it's just a lightning fast pace of a game. It doesn't dwell on things whatsoever. Go over here, do this, few cheap gags, move over to the next plot point, such as plot points work in SpongeBob.
It's a pretty, I mean, it's exactly what it says on the tin. I actually quite enjoyed it. I played through the whole thing. There's still a lot for me to do. But it's like pretty breezy. You can play through the whole thing in about 10 hours. Like, I also rolled credits on Space for the Unbound this week, and I actually put more time into that than SpongeBob. So SpongeBob's a quick playthrough. There's a lot of stuff you can go back and sort of do and clean up, and costumes you can unlock, and little...
Yeah, the costumes are a nice touch,
Yeah, but what it is, I mean, it's a $40 licensed SpongeBob platformer that I think is... I was actually surprised at how creative they end up getting with the levels, and it actually reminded me of like a budget Psychonauts 2, is the game that I keep comparing it to, because... you just the variety, like, because they have so much fun with the different levels. The first kind of level is like a cowboy level, then you've got like a pirate level, there's a prehistoric level, like it's all pretty colorful, and you're not ever doing the same thing for too long. Yes, there's not a ton of like combat abilities or whatever. It's a SpongeBob game. This is for kids, but I think that if you like the kind of classic, like Battle for Bikini Bottom, those kind of GameCube era licensed platformers, this game was made for you. Like, you're gonna love this. I will say, I did run into a few technical things. Some of the transitions between the loading screens and the next areas were really choppy. And within like the third combat encounter, I had an opponent glitch through the floor on me. I had that happen once. Yeah.
So within the fairly short time that I played the game, I did notice some pretty obvious technical issues. But I don't want to say that sunk my enjoyment of the game. Bad pun intended. But again, it's a SpongeBob SquarePants 3D action platformer from THQ Nordic. I think what you expect from this game is exactly what you're going to get.
I think you will like it more the deeper you get into it. I think that it has an actually bad start. Like, it starts so slow, and there's like so many, it does, and I get it, it's a kid's game, but it does the thing that always annoys me in games, where it will tutorialize even the most basic, like, screech to a halt, here's how you jump. And I'm just like, all right, like we didn't need to go this far, you
Yeah,
know?
it gives you the attack tutorial 3 separate times. Like,
Yeah.
here's how you attack.
Yeah.
Here's how
So
you attack again. I'm like, but I got that. You showed me that like 3 minutes
yeah,
ago.
it,
By
it
the
took
way, here's how you attack. Like, are you kidding, game?
yeah, it took some time for it to really kind of I ended up really kind of coming around to it. And again, for what it is, this isn't gonna be game of the year. This isn't gonna win any awards, but if you're a SpongeBob fan and slash or if you have like kids who are SpongeBob fans, I think this is
Yeah.
like an easy recommend. And I'll say too, I'm fairly impressed with how the Switch version runs. Like the frame rate is it drops a little bit, but it's like a pretty solid 30 frames even when things get pretty intense. There are a couple moments in the pirate stage in particular. They introduced this mechanic where you like slingshot like across the stage over and over.
Mm-hmm.
And it can get pretty choppy in that portion. But overall, though, I think it runs fairly stably, and I think it looks pretty good.
Yeah, the
Like it just,
presentation, I'll admit, it does look really good
yeah,
for especially for a licensed game. So again, yeah, SpongeBob fan, pretty easy recommend, but this is not one of those. It's not GoldenEye 007. It's not one of those lightning in a bottle licensed games
no,
that's going to turn into an all-time classic or anything.
no,
But,
no,
you
no.
know, it's not broken either. So well done, THQ Nordic. I know especially that name does kind of induce groans in you, Seth. I know you're not the biggest THQ Nordic guy, but I'm glad you enjoyed this one.
I'm fascinated by THQ Nordic. I'm not a fan of theirs. I like what they do more often than not, but I'm mostly just fascinated with them as a company. And I think this is cool. I think that, because I do know that there's like a subset of people on the internet that are like diehard SpongeBob fans that really
Oh yeah.
wanted this. And my thought the entire time playing this game was just, man, I'm so happy that this exists for those people. Like
Yeah.
and I'm not a big SpongeBob guy, so there are a lot of references that I'm sure are going straight over my head, you know, and but I can tell that there's like a lot of love here and a lot of like kind of in jokes and references and stuff like this to people who love SpongeBob. So I just, I was really charmed by it. It's not game of the year, but I think it's charming. And for $40, if you're a SpongeBob fan, I say give it a shot. I think it's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, but speaking of running well on Switch, there was a game that I specifically wanted to check out for all of our amazing fans and listeners to report back to you on how it ran on the Nintendo Switch. I played Power Wash Simulator.
Oh yeah, yeah, you've been playing a lot of that actually.
I have actually, and I didn't understand. Like, I saw it on PC, and Square Enix has been marketing that game a lot since it came out. They've been blowing it up on Twitter, and I honestly thought it was a joke for the first, because as a game concept, it kind of feels like a joke. It's like all of these other simulator games, like Farming Simulator and driving, like Truck Driver Simulator, and all of these other vocational simulator games. This one just felt like it was specifically like almost Goat Simulator levels of comedic intent. But after I thought about it, I was like, of course I was going to be the target audience for this game. Of course it was going to be me, because the entire thing behind the game is how satisfying it feels to use a power washer. It doesn't feel as good as using a power washer IRL, but that satisfying feeling of seeing something dirty getting like instantly becoming clean.
Mm-hmm.
And especially you and I have already had this conversation, Seth, but I'm the guy who, when he plays a JRPG, if you fill in the map by running around and exploring the map, if that's how the map fills in, I'm always the guy that has to run around every single square inch of every map so that I have the full map up on screen for me. You also made the comparison to Metroid Dread, which has something similar on its map. So I went through and what I called painted in the entire map on Metroid Dread. I do that all the time with Xenoblade Chronicles 3 as a JRPG, like what I'm talking about. Whenever I play games like that, that's exactly what I do. So of course I was going to become completely enraptured by Power Wash Simulator. And sure enough, I was. And if it's a game that you are wanting to try out, it does. I think it might have I can't remember if it has a demo. I should have double checked that.
I don't think
I don't
so.
think so.
Yeah.
But I can say it does run extremely well on the Nintendo Switch. I've had a stable frame rate the entire time, never had a dip in really performance or visual fidelity. It runs incredibly well on the Nintendo Switch. I just wish the text were a little bit bigger. I was also super excited because the same day it dropped on the Nintendo Switch, they also dropped the Tomb Raider DLC, which added 5 Tomb Raider themed missions to the game, including Lara Croft's manor, her armory, the maze, and several other things. And the one thing that truly pushed me over the edge, pushed me over the cliff, frankly, of getting this is the fact that this past week they also announced the next update coming to the game, and that is a Final Fantasy VII crossover. So in Power Wash Simulator, you're going to be able to clean Tifa's Seventh Heaven bar. You're going to be able to clean Cloudstrife's iconic motorcycle from the highway chase scene at the end of the Midgar section, and the Guard Scorpion, the very first boss in the game, the Guard Scorpion. You'll be able to clean that as well, and I cannot wait to do that. But
It's pretty great.
it is what it says on the tin, but it winds up being really satisfying. It is definitely a time sink. Genuinely, a lot of these stages and missions will probably take you about as much time as they would take you to do IRL. I cleaned up a playground as one of the opening campaign missions. I think it's 4th or 5th campaign mission, and that one took me like 3 or 4 hours. But you have a lot of tools at your disposal. As you continue to rank up, you can get more powerful tools. Obviously, it's got all of those kinds of gameplay mechanics, but there's a ton of stuff that you can do with the control of it, which winds up being, again, just really satisfying. It's satisfying to play, and it's satisfying to see the fruits of your labor after everything is said and done. I don't know why, but it's a really, really good game, and it runs really well on the Switch.
Nice. And for anybody who's confused about like why they have the Lara Croft and the FF7 stuff, it's because the game's actually, believe it or not, published by Square Enix. So
Yeah.
they've got all the rights in the world to do that. So yeah, that that alone I think is going to sell more than a few copies of Power Wash Simulator.
But if you need something, if you need to come down, I think it'd be a great game for like ASMR, or a great game to relax with.
Yeah.
You know, if you just need to decompress, I think it'd be a great game for that. Just throw on an episode of All In and play Power Wash Simulator. I think it's a great, great game for something like that.
Nice.
But the last thing that I'm going to say is, you mentioned it already, Seth, but you and I both rolled credits on, frankly, one of the most special indie games we've played on the Nintendo Switch. You and I both rolled credits on A Space for the Unbound.
Yeah.
And I've just got to say, wow. Mojikin Studio, Toge Production, just wow.
Yeah. I don't want to talk about it too much because
I don't
want to spoil anything about it, first of all, but I also, like, we need to do either an indie showcase, a spoiler cast, or both, like something. We need to do something because this game is so special. Everybody needs to play this. A Space for the Unbound is my current, like, I know it's only February, but this is the game to beat for me right now in terms of game of the year. Like, it's my favorite game I've played this year so far. It's
God,
so good.
It's so good. It really is. But I mean, aside from Space for the Unbound, aside from Cosmic Shake, what have you been up to, my dear friend?
Yeah, so we've already touched on those. I'll just mention 2 other things. Fashion Police Squad is
Yes, what is Fashion Police Squad?
I definitely want to tell you all about. Huge thanks to the publisher No More Robots for letting us check this out. There is a video on the channel for both this and the Cosmic Shake. So if you're curious about those, and A Space for the Unbound, actually. So if you're curious about any of those, you can check those out on the YouTube channel. But Fashion Police Squad, which I didn't realize was FPS until way too late.
Yeah. Yep.
Is a shooter. It's like a classic, like, kind of Doom, actually more
Exactly.
Wolfenstein than Doom, boomer shooter. And it's a kind of pixel art, like it's all rendered in this really pretty, like, kind of pixel art aesthetic. But the big thing about this is rather than shooting people down or shooting enemies down or whatever, you're helping them out with their fashion. It's the actual fashion police. So the enemies in the game will be people who either wear too much black and gray, or people whose clothes don't fit correctly, so they have like the baggy pants with the underwear out or whatever. And and likewise, there'll be people who are actually too colorful. They've gone like too far. So rather than like shooting them with a shotgun or whatever, you are either adding color to their gray clothing, removing color from their too colorful clothing, or, you know, using like a nail gun to tighten their ill-fitting clothes. You know, so it's all about like helping people with fashion. And man, it is so much fun. It's just like fun writing, just fun gameplay. None of it would work if it wasn't just also a really good shooter, like a really good kind of, you know, arcadey Wolfenstein style shooter. But it is. It runs at a perfect 60 FPS. Like it feels great to play. And I'm really, really taken with it. It also, the whole city that it takes place in has great theming. So like all of the like buildings and locations will be references to real places, but they're named and styled after this sort of like RuPaul's Drag Race Project Runway vibe that it has. And so instead of Subway, it's Club Slay, you know, and stuff like that.
Oh, instead of like San Francisco, it's like San Fierce Cisco.
It's stuff like that. And it'll even have like, there'll be a narrator every time you take down an enemy. It'll be like fierce, or you know, or fabulous. You know, it's really good. And,
like a fighting game announcer or something.
Yeah, and at the end of a stage, so when you go through a stage, there are secrets to find, which are basically just posters of the main character in various outfits. One of which is a reference to Duke Nukem, and that's really good.
Nice.
And so there are those secrets to find kind of off the beaten path. There is swag to find, so there will be like watches or bow ties or whatever to find, and that'll give you armor. And then in addition to that, the game tracks the amount of people that you've helped. So you need to also go through and fix the fashion of every enemy in the stage. And at the end of a stage, when it's displaying these stats, it's just a runway. So all the enemies that you've helped walk down the runway. Great. And pose. Oh, it's very, very good. It's one of the most like well-themed games I've ever played. Like it's really, really cool. I
just keep thinking of like the vegan police from Scott Pilgrim.
It's those vibes. Yeah, it's the literal fashion police dressed up as a really fun and satisfying boomer shooter. And I gotta say too, they do some really interesting things. At a certain point, one of the kind of secondary weapons you get is your character will take his belt off and whip people with it.
Like booty tang or something?
Yeah. And
if you understand that reference, I don't know if we can be friends or not, but if you understand that reference, you probably need to go to the doctor.
There are enemies who you have to, like, you'll see people who walk around with the sagging like pants or whatever, and so their underwear is hanging out, and that's the only way you can damage them is by putting a belt on them. And then there will also be these like hook points that you can use the belt on like a whip and swing on it, like in first person, and it feels great. Like it's just a really, really well-made game. I'm really impressed by it. I think people should check it out. I think it's $14.99. Fashion Police Squad, out now on the Nintendo Switch. Give it a look.
I gotta find some time to try that this weekend.
So much fun. So much fun. I think you'll really get a kick out of it. But the last thing I'll shout out is something that I was really excited about. A demo for Theater Rhythm Final Bar Line dropped.
Yes.
And man, I was so excited to check this out. And upon downloading the demo and playing it, I'm happy to report that I am ready to be addicted and broke all over again with Theater Rhythm on the Switch.
You're ready to be taken advantage of by Square.
Yeah. There was a little bit of a conversation in the Discord about that. I'm like, guys,
yeah, there was.
My hands are tied. Like, I understand. Yep. I have been very vocal on this show about Square Enix's shady business practices. I'm the first person to call it out. But when it comes to Theater Rhythm, my hands are tied. Like, I'm sorry, they just have a. Speaking of Scott Pilgrim, it's like the end of Scott Pilgrim where Ramona's like, it just has a he just has a power over me. Like she has the chip on the back of her neck. That's Square Enix with Theater Rhythm in me right now. Oh my gosh, I love it so much. I'm having a great time with it. The thing that I noticed right away is that playing on higher difficulties, I feel like the charting of the notes in this is way better than it was even in Curtain Call, which I already loved. And just like the sheer amount of songs, even in the base version of the game, there's going to be, I think, 385 tracks. If you get the DLC, the deluxe editions, there's going to be, I think, over 500 tracks. So it's absolutely wild.
I will give it to them. 385 tracks is a full featured game. I will give that to them.
Yeah, they're not gated. I mean, if there's and you can buy a lot of the tracks piecemeal too. You can buy like the different packs for various games. They're gonna have a near pack, a chrono pack, and I'm just gonna buy like the big one that has all of them because that was how I was with Curtain Call. I bought everything they released. It has a spell on me. And I will say, my only real complaint with it, and I don't know if this is something that just isn't in the demo or if it's just not in the game, I wish that I could play it with touch controls. Because I loved controlling Curtain Call that way.
It's weird that they're not in there, especially considering that, yes, up until now, it was specifically a DS/3DS franchise that thrived on the touch controls from the handheld system's touchscreen. So that is surprising that they wouldn't implement that, considering it was basically the core control method for the first two games.
Yeah, and I know that the game is also coming out on PlayStation, but PlayStation even has a little touchpad in the middle of the controller that they could have used. So my favorite thing about Curtain Call was playing it with the stylus, and it really did feel like you were conducting an orchestra, like flicking the bottom to the timing, and like it really did feel that way. And I loved that vibe, and I felt like I played a lot better that way too. So it's been hard to sort of learn the controller controls, and I hope this is something that maybe they'll patch in, because I'll buy a stylus for my Switch, absolutely. But otherwise, no huge complaints. I'm head over heels in love with it. It looks gorgeous too on the OLED.
I bet, goodness. Yeah.
I'm this comes out in just a couple of weeks, and I'm really, really excited to sink my teeth into it. I didn't want to play the demo too much. Even though your progress does carry over, they cap the amount of Rhythmia that you gain, so there's not
I assume Rhythmia is the in-game currency and not some... And that, it sounds like some terminal condition, but I assume it's the in-game currency.
It's the currency that you use for like special unlocks, and and this is like an RPG, so you've got characters you're unlocking and you're leveling them up and you're setting a party, and it is a little Final Fantasy rhythm game, and man, I'm really excited to dig into it. So that's available now. If you want to check it out, see what Theater Rhythm is all about. Free demo on the Switch eShop right now. But sir, it has been kind of a low-key big news week. We've got kind of a lot to get into.
We do.
Out of nowhere. So what do you say we go ahead and get into it?
Out of nowhere, like an RKO about to clock us and pin us with the 1, 2, 3. So let's talk about it.
Hey, listen!
Eric, I feel like the big story this week is the E3 story.
Yeah. So... you and I have been wondering and thinking and considering and analyzing and just looking at everything going on, and says, like, we didn't really have a super good feeling coming into E3 2023. We didn't have one last year. They said they were going to come back. They said they were going to come back. What? Did somebody type something in the chat?
Yeah,
Seth just laughed his butt off at something in the chat. What was it?
Sam almost got a spit take. Sorry. Sam in the chat said, if you are a loved one or suffering from arrhythmia, you may be entitled to legal compensation. Oh my gosh. Sorry.
I suffer from moderate to severe arrhythmia.
Yeah. I gotta take my arrhythmia pills. Oh my gosh.
If you or a loved one suffer from moderate to severe arrhythmia, go see your Dr. Mario.
Yeah.
No, but yes, good job, Sam. Well done. I see what you did there, sir. But yes, getting back to E3, yeah, the big three, Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo, are not going to be at E3. They are not going to be presenting in conjunction with E3 this year, which really feels, I mean, E3 is not officially dead, officially, but doesn't this just kind of feel like the final nail in the coffin of E3?
Yeah, a little bit. Well, we should say too that this comes from an IGN report. They say it's an exclusive confirmation. They are, of course, confident enough to report this, and I'm sure they're right. But it's worth noting that this has not been individually confirmed by either of the big three. But both ReadPop and the ESA kind of issued statements responding to the report. Neither one of them denied the validity of it, though, which does tell me that it's true. And Microsoft, they announced last week their own summer showcase that they're doing, just like they've done in the past. It's probably literally going to be across the street from the LA Convention Center. That's where they usually do it. So I think this is true, you know, and Sony and Nintendo haven't gone there in many years, but this was supposed to be kind of the big return to form for E3. This was supposed to be E3's back, you know, and it does definitely feel like it's too little too late for them. It definitely does feel like with the big three not being there, that a lot of people are just not going to be interested. And, you know, it's unfortunate. And we've talked about on this show, we've had dedicated conversations, you know, I have a lot of love and nostalgia for E3, and I was admittedly pulling for them, you know, this year. And I was kind of hoping, especially with Nintendo in particular, with their history with E3, I was kind of hoping that maybe there would be something there, because they haven't really participated in Summer Game Fest either. You know, Nintendo marches to the beat of their own drum.
Exactly, yeah. They've very much been doing their own thing, especially since the Nintendo Directs really took off and caught fire. And when it comes to E3 specifically, when we had this conversation, because we did an entire main segment on this a while back, and I specifically said that I felt E3 should maybe tone back on the importance of the big reveals and maybe, you know, blow up and, you know, maybe really hit home how much of a party that it is, how much of an event it is. And they can still do that, but still having the three biggest video game companies, you know, the three big hardware producers in the industry not showing up to your party, it's going to be really hard to really drive home a big comeback if the three coolest kids at school have all specifically decided not to show up to your big party.
Yeah, and of course, Jeff Keighley wasted no time with the like, I think minutes after that report came out with the Summer Game Fest, you know, just continuing to go for the jugular. It is what it is. I don't, you know, for me, I'm kind of like, God, like, stop, he's already dead, you know,
kind of,
that sort of thing.
It does feel kind of lowbrow for Jeff. Like, he doesn't need to do that. I was almost surprised that he didn't rent out the convention center across from, you know, but you know what, we'll see what happens. The thing that really annoyed me was, and I'm not gonna dwell on this, but as part of this report, the reasoning given behind the three different companies not being there is, you know, obviously Microsoft, you know, doing their thing, and Sony and Nintendo specifically not, you know, the fact that they've moved away from E3 over the past few years. But Nintendo, there was a specific report that mentioned heavy hitters.
Yeah.
And Nintendo's quote unquote lack of heavy hitters following Tears of the Kingdom. And there was all this speculation this past week about whether or not Nintendo was going to have a quote unquote light year. And it's like, it's the beginning of February. We have no clue what the rest of the year is going to look like outside of Kirby and Pikmin 4 and Tears of the Kingdom. Kirby and Pikmin 4, by the way, I would still contend are fairly heavy hitters. But there's still so much that we have to learn about Nintendo's 2023. The fact that so many people were commenting and, It was like, oh my God, is Nintendo going to have an off year? Like, no, they just decided not to give us their entire roadmap here in February. It's going to be okay, everybody.
Yeah. And by the way, nobody knows. Like, there's not they can know their sources or whatever can know as much as they want about the way they're marketing to E3, but that has nothing to do with the fact that Nintendo isn't going to tell anybody. Nintendo's the most secretive company in video games. There is
Yeah.
not anybody out there spreading these leaks or rumors who knows what Nintendo's slate is going to be. So the notion that Nintendo is going to just sort of like take the L for 2023 in a year that's going to have Pikmin 4, even something like Bayonetta Origins, you know, and it's all subjective. Like, if just because it isn't a heavy hitter to you, just because people out there only care about the Marios and Zeldas, doesn't mean that something like Pikmin 4 isn't a heavy hitter, in quotes, to a huge amount of people. You know, so I just think it's a very subjective thing to apply like an umbrella statement to, and it really kind of annoys me. And I'm also like, guys, like, it's literally February. Like, we haven't even had our first direct of the year yet. Relax.
Yeah.
You know?
It's like, oh my God, it's going to be a light year for Nintendo. It's like, just because they didn't line everything up for us already, don't, like, there's so much fear mongering going on.
Relax.
And I say that after you and I just talked about the final nail in the coffin of E3, admittedly. I know that. But going back to the conversation with E3, I still hope that E3 has a really big breakout event this year. And I'm actually going to pedal back something. I'm going to try to throw some good energy their way. I'm going to take that last nail out of the coffin. I'm going to be like E3, I hope you take this as a challenge. I hope you don't take this as we are finally defeated. I hope you take this as, you know what? We get it. We are going to rise to the occasion. We are going to put on the best party that the video games industry has ever seen. And I really hope they do that. I will be very excited, and nobody would be happier than me if it comes out and E3 is the most awesome thing since sliced bread this year. Nobody would be happier than me. So I hope that happens. I'm taking that nail out of the coffin, throwing some good juju your way, E3. Rise to the occasion.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope so, man. I hope so. Well, let me just touch on this next story here, because I think that this actually is probably, if nothing else, an indication that Nintendo's not going to have a light year. Because after a long multi-year absence, just this past week, Nintendo Switch Game Vouchers have officially returned in North American markets. Now, these have been still a thing in other markets. If anybody out there doesn't know what these cost $99.98, and they allow you to redeem them for 2 digital titles in the game's catalog.
Yes, it's 2 game vouchers
Yeah.
for basically $100 that you can spend on 2 $60 games. So what
Right.
you're doing is you're getting $10 off 2 games of your choice out of a selection of first and second party Nintendo titles.
Basically,
It's cool, and saving money is saving money. It's not like, it's not like an Xbox Game Pass size deal or anything, but I mean, I'll take a $20 savings, especially if, like, all the games on offer here are all very good games. So
Yeah.
if you were looking to pick up some of these, because admittedly, Seth, you and I know that outside of, like the Game Awards sales and outside of a couple other things, first party Nintendo games maintain their value basically indefinitely. So if you can get $10 off a couple of these, sure, do it. If you've got NSO, if you've got the ability to get a couple of these vouchers and you've been looking at a few of these games, do it.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're somebody who gets your games digitally, I think there's no reason not to, right? If you're going to get these anyway, you might as well save $20 on to get 2 games for $20 off. Seems like a good deal to me. And again, these are exclusive to NSO members, so
Yes.
that's worth noting as well. And basically every first and third party release that is major on the Switch is eligible in the game's catalog. So you can assume that when Nintendo has other first party games revealed for the rest of the year, that they'll be eligible as well. So it's cool to have this back. To me, I'm like, I don't understand why they went away in the first place, but it's cool to have them back.
It is cool to have them back, but I think crucially, I think there's one big question that we need to answer, and I'm going to ask it of you.
Okay.
Is this what puts you over the edge of picking up some of those full price games? Is this what says, okay, now I'm going to buy them?
Well, for me, I get my first party Nintendo games physically anyway.
Yeah, you and I both do, but I'm trying to like hypothetically here.
Yeah.
Do you think that if you're looking at $60 games, these vouchers are going to be like, oh, now's the time? I don't know if that's going to be that for a lot of people.
I mean, I think that a lot of people who are looking at first party Nintendo games kind of have the understanding that, especially if you're an NSO subscriber, you're kind of in a bracket of like at least a little more hardcore than the average person if you're an NSO subscriber and if you're eligible to get these vouchers. So I think there is an understanding of like, hey, these games don't go on sale very often at all. And if you're going to get them anyway, it's like, why not? If I were a digital gamer, I'd be loading up on these things. I mean, absolutely. If I were getting these games digitally, I'd probably already have some just banked and waiting for Tears of the Kingdom or whatever else. I mean, you might.
Yeah, that's another good point, is how many of these can you, like, you can get these indefinitely,
you can stack
right?
them. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that at least is a thing. It's not just, you're not relegated to just two and that's it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can basically take $10 off of digital Nintendo games at this point, buy twos if you want to use the vouchers. So, at least they're doing that.
I think it's really cool. Again, I don't know why they stopped it in the first place, and it's cool to have them back. If you're somebody who plays your games digitally, I'd say jump on it. But Eric, we need to talk about, we got 2 drops of new Mario movie information this week, and we got to talk about this. So the first thing that happened was actually just a little clip.
People called it a trailer. It was a TV spot. It wasn't a trailer. It was a TV spot. I didn't realize it was actually happening. I was just watching the NFC Championship game anyway this past weekend between the between the 49ers and the Eagles. And during the first big commercial break of the game, all of a sudden, I'm looking at Cap Mario and watching Donkey Kong punch Mario in the face. And I'm like, Seth, new footage. And you're like, yep, I know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I get this stuff injected into my veins. I see it basically as soon as it comes out. Let me ask you, so when is the Super Bowl exactly?
The Super Bowl is next weekend.
Okay.
Next weekend. It should be next weekend, I believe.
I would almost expect we get a trailer at the Super Bowl or a new commercial or something like this at the Super Bowl. 2/12
next Sunday. Yes.
Yeah. So I am feeling pretty strongly that we're probably going to get some kind of new commercial at the Super Bowl at this point. And this clip,
we'll see. There's a lot of companies teasing their big Super Bowl spots already.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah, and so this clip basically it's the Donkey Kong clip we've already seen essentially, but Mario gets the cat suit from 3D World, which is already great, and it's a funny little moment. Chris Pratt's like meow,
meow. But and despite the fact it's one of the greatest power-ups in the franchise, they play it up like a joke.
Yeah, it's a throwaway gag essentially, because Donkey Kong just pummels Mario immediately after getting it and berating him and laughing at him. And crucially, this is the first time we hear Seth Rogen's voice as Donkey Kong. And it's Seth Rogen's voice, all right.
Yeah, it appears like Seth Rogen. Again, we only have a single line of dialogue to go off of, but it didn't seem like he was trying to even attempt some type of character accent or something. Yeah, it's basically just Seth Rogen. At least at the very least, people want to give Chris Pratt a lot of flack, but at least he's attempting a character accent.
There's something going on there. But the thing I really want to talk about is the poster. So earlier today, as we're recording this, on Friday, like late afternoon, really just a couple of hours before we started going live here on YouTube, they dropped a brand new poster, and it's a great character poster. It's got all of your main characters, all of the ones who are voiced. Eric's showing it if you're watching he's got it as his phone wallpaper already.
After 2 years, I finally have a new phone wallpaper. After 2 years of having Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope, I finally just a couple hours ago got my brand new phone wallpaper.
it's a gorgeous poster, and it's got it's got Mario, Peach, Toad, Luigi, it's got Kamek and Bowser, all these like kind of big voiced characters. You got a shot of Rainbow Road, you got a shot of the sort of Mushroom Kingdom. You got the Bowser's Kingdom in the background. You got an army of Koopa paratroopers flying in, but
it's like an MCU or Star Wars poster.
Oh, totally. Yeah, totally. They're all sort of lined up in the middle. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous poster.
Yes.
But the weird thing about this poster is there is another character sharing poster space with everybody else who has not been revealed previously.
Quite a bit of poster space, too.
Yeah. To have poster space with all these other people who are major characters voiced by A-list celebrities, you have got this seemingly random blue spiky shell Koopa paratroopa. And I put out a YouTube short about this because I think what we're seeing here is the characterization of the Mario Kart blue shell. I think that's what this is. I think
we'll see. I mean, it's the same shade.
They have made the blue shell a character. And we know that Mario Kart is huge for Nintendo. It's a huge part of Super Nintendo World, obviously. It is a huge part of the movie. We saw in the last full trailer the shot of Rainbow Road and all of this. So we know that Mario Kart is a big part of this movie. And I think that what they have done here, and you just look at the look on that dude's face, is that not just the look of the blue shell? Yes.
It's just the smug.
I mean, he looks like he is just ready.
He's blue, he's spiky, he's winged. It's the blue shell, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah.
And I really hope this character isn't just relegated to the movie. Imagine if this character just appeared in some way, shape, or form in Mario Kart. That would be like, that should be the main antagonist of the Mario Kart franchise, frankly.
That'd be amazing. And I think they're sort of positioning this, and this is what really excites me as somebody who's really into like Mario lore and stuff, to have this new character who could potentially be a major recurring character if they play their cards right. And if he's sharing this much poster space with voice, they could have put Cranky Kong on there. They could have put anybody they wanted to on there. They put this guy. So I'm like, who's voicing him? What role is he going to play in the movie? I'm just ready for him to have his own like army of other blue-shelled paratroopers and just like kamikaze Rainbow Road, essentially, is what I think is going to happen.
But this was something that you and I specifically said when we did a top 5 lessons that the new Super Mario Brothers movie could learn from the 1993 iteration with Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo. And one of the things we said was we didn't want this movie to be scared to introduce new characters. We wanted them to expand the lore. We wanted to see what new items and new elements they could bring to the table of the Super Mario Brothers mythos. And this looks to be their answer to that. This is basically, this render is all we have, but it's something new within the world of Super Mario Brothers. And all of a sudden, he has piqued the interest of the entire fandom, us especially.
Oh, I'm so excited. I just like that. And it's such a cool idea. Like, it's the kind of thing that makes perfect sense. And I'm like, how has this not already happened? Like this, the blue shell is this totally, antagonistic, kind of cruel and unfeeling force. It makes such perfect sense to make an actual enemy based off of this. And to me, I've talked about this on the show before. I'm really hoping that we get a like game tie-in to this movie. And I'm like, man, this more than ever makes me want that, because I want to see this in the context of a game.
And it's too bad that bloopers are already enemies within the Mario universe, because it's a blue Koopa. Bloopa is just right there. So it's too bad that bloopers already exist.
Who's voicing him? What's the character's name? We've seen other sort of, we've seen plenty of shots of Bowser's army. We've seen even like there's like a red Koopa Troopa that has like an eye patch and stuff. Who, so we've seen kind of like unique troops. But man, this one, again, to be right there front and center on the poster, I think is huge. I'm like really into it. I can't wait for this movie. We're just barely 2 months away at this point.
2 months away. Isn't that weird to think?
Yeah, I have never been this excited for a movie. I'm gonna freak out. Ugh. Man, bring it on. We're getting close.
Yes. Unfortunately, we do have a little bit of bad news.
Yeah.
Here at the beginning of the year, it seems like a lot of live service games, a lot of, free-to-play console games here at the beginning of 2023 have started giving notice that they are going to shut down. We've had that from a few fairly notable titles, including a game that we did an indie showcase on last year. Unfortunately, Season 9 is going to be the final season for Knockout City. And that really stinks because that's a super fun online multiplayer dodgeball game. If you haven't tried it out, I definitely recommend, because again, that it moved to free to play. So if you haven't tried it, definitely go on and give it a whirl before it potentially shuts down. I will say one thing they did make time to note in that shutdown notice is that they have more things coming. This isn't just going to be like the end. They press stop and then all of a sudden it doesn't exist anymore. They have teased more stuff coming. But as far as this game and its support goes, that will be stopping in June, I believe.
Yeah, it's June 6th is going to be when the servers get shut down. So they're doing a couple of really cool things. So Season 9 sounds like it's going to be massive for this game. And they're doing the classic kind of end of life stuff where they're rolling out all the old content, bringing it back in, making it very inexpensive and, making it very obtainable to get everything you want to get. But one thing that I really want to commend them for, and this isn't getting reported on widely, but I really want to stop and mention it, the PC version of the game, they have retrofitted to support private servers, meaning that if you have the game on PC and you want to continue to play it, you can do so on your own private server. So the game isn't necessarily dying. They're just saying, hey, the fans are going to run it from now on, basically. I think that's great. I think it's really cool.
Ironically enough, we talked about a game called Hyper Gunsport a couple weeks ago that I played. The original Gunsport on Steam actually did something very similar to that. So that one is similarly getting shut down, but they've kind of patched it in so that, like Knockout City, you can play that offline so that the game can have some kind of life after death in that regard as well. So if you have that game, be aware of that.
Yeah. But speaking of updates, we did get another presentation for next week's major update to Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. It's coming on the 7th, and it's going to be adding new monsters Velkhana and Risen Crimson Glow Valstrax, as well as further expansion to Anomaly Research quests and weekly event quests, and some very strange cosmetic DLC.
Oh my god. Velkhana looks really cool. It's this really cool ice dragon. Kind of looks like almost the ice brother to Malzeno. Really interesting new fight that's coming to the game. It's always really cool to see all these elder dragons show up as free DLC. Again, that's worth re-noting. This is free DLC coming to Sunbreak here in just a few days. Risen Crimson Glow Valstrax, Velkhana, expanded anomaly quest to continue that grind for more and better loot, more and better weapons, more and better armor. And we still have another one coming. But yes, they always seem to make a headline out of the cosmetics. Last time it was those amazing fluffy plush animal weapons. And this time there's a couple things of note when it comes to the cosmetics. First off, they have added a admittedly really cool Velkhana costume for the Palamute. That's a really cool little costume. Yeah. I have Rush and Amaterasu, so I'm probably not going to use it, but that's a pretty cool little costume for the Palamute, which you can actually get prior to the release of the update, of the title update, if you decide to create, I think it's a Capcom online profile or something, and sign up for their newsletter. However, there are cosmetics now in this update that are frankly cursed, Seth. That really is the best word. Like, what are they even doing with these costumes?
Yeah, they're making some cosmetic costumes, layered armor or whatever, based around the sort of like artwork of the guide, artwork,
like the children's artwork of the hunter's manual and the stickers. And I'm sure if you followed Monster Hunter, you've seen the very childlike artwork they used to portray a lot of, basically a lot of the things that they show off in the game. They have the typical key art that looks a little bit more photorealistic, at least as photorealistic as Monster Hunter gets. But then you have these really bizarre childlike drawings, and they're making full-on costumes out of these childlike drawings. Kind of reminds me a little bit. I'm moving a little bit away from the world of Nintendo for just half a second, but it actually reminds me of the Blanca-chan keychain getting its own costume for Blanca in Street Fighter V, basically turning Blanca into a giant plush character.
Weird,
and that's
man.
yeah, it looks bizarre, it looks weird, and like I said, cursed is kind of the right word. They frankly just look horrifying in motion, and I really hope I never team up with anybody who's wearing one of those things, because I will quit.
I think that's what it is. I think they're leaning into people are gonna wear this to be like trolly and like funny and stuff like that. So, I think that's really what they're kind of leaning into there. So, hey, it got people's attention if nothing else, and there is a new title update. Title update 5 is the kind of last one that we know about, coming in April.
Yes.
With a returning Elder Dragon and a quote powered up monster in title update 5. So that'll be coming in April.
Man, just the amount of content that we've gotten with Monster Hunter Rise since it first released, the amount of new monsters and weapons and stuff that's been added to this game, it is absolutely ginormous. One of the most fun games, one of the most fun online co-op experiences you can have on the Nintendo Switch. Seth and I did multiple reviews, first of the game and of the DLC Sunbreak when it released. So if you have it, check it out. There are demos available for that, but we'll keep tooting the hunting horn for Monster Hunter Rise and Sunbreak. It's a really, really cool game, and I can't believe all of this stuff they crammed into Nintendo's hybrid console.
Yep. So that update is coming next week on the 7th. But Eric, let's quickly hit these notable releases that are out now this week.
Oh my god! So many of them.
Big week. We've already mentioned some of them. Fashion Police Squad, SpongeBob
Yes.
SquarePants, The Cosmic Shake.
Yes.
Again, big thanks to the publishers for letting us check those out. There are videos for both on the YouTube channel. And Eric mentioned Power Wash Simulator quite a bit earlier as well. Those are all out this week. I actually want to shout out this little game that I think you might be interested in, Eric, Rhythm Sprout, which
Okay.
I feel like not a lot of people are talking about this. I really want to play it. This is kind of giving me Harmonite vibes a little bit.
You know what? We brought up Harmonite because over this past week, with the rise of Final Fantasy Theater Rhythm and with Hi-Fi Rush, which is also a rhythm game that just got shadow dropped on the Xbox last week, very famously, there's this kind of little bit resurgence of rhythm action games, and I was like, oh, Harmonite 2, Harmonite 2, Harmonite 2 from Game Freak. That would be amazing. But if you're making Harmonite connections, it is definitely a game that I need to check out. It's called, you said, Rhythm Sprout?
Rhythm Sprout. Yeah, you have this little kind of Onion Knight looking guy. And it's like a rhythm action game. It kind of reminds me, it's not laid out exactly the same way, but the idea looks very similar to Harmonite. And I haven't played it yet. I'm really interested just watching the trailers and stuff. So I'm hoping it's as good as it looks. We talked about these a little bit last week, but we did get released this week Trek to Yomi.
Yes.
Which is
from, really hope I can find some time to check that one out. Again, if you didn't check out last week's episode, A, why not? But B, Trek to Yomi is basically two-dimensional Ghost of Tsushima, like a 2D Akira Kurosawa film.
Yep. Looks really cool from Devolver Digital. And then we got from Annapurna The Pathless, which I've been looking forward to for actual years. Yeah, I've been waiting on this to come to Switch for a long time. I really want to play this. This is from Giant Squid, the Abzu folks, and it's kind of like a it's like a big kind of open world game, but the whole thing is it has a very like free flowing combat system where your movement is based around firing your bow and arrow. It looks really cool. I really want to play it. And then the Life is Strange series essentially was completed on Switch this week.
Yep. So we had Life is Strange True Colors. We finally got the Arcadia collection. And now here we finally have Life is Strange 2 to complete the circle. Life is now completely strange on the Nintendo Switch. So you really don't have any reason not to at least take a look at the franchise at this point. Some really, really special
They're all great
games. Yeah.
Yeah, they're all great.
Some of the
Life is
most
Strange 2,
heartfelt and emotional, just some of the best storytelling from, bigger studios, frankly, on the Switch.
Yeah, really good stuff. Great series. Life is Strange 2, an underrated game. Check them out. But that's been the notable releases. A big week. Big week for sure.
Yeah, as if we don't already have enough to play here in 2023. We've still got a ton of other games that a lot of our community members are tugging on our ears about. It's like, you got to play Chained Echoes. You got to play.
Oh my God, I know.
Yeah. I know, man. There's so many great games on the Nintendo Switch. But let us know what you guys are playing. We'd love to hear. We need more games for our backlog. That's the way this works. We need more games for our backlog. So let us know what you're playing. Reach out to us on Facebook at All In Podcast, on Twitter at All In Podcast. Again, we just mentioned our Discord. Join it. Yes. Join it. Why haven't you already? Join it. We have an amazing, incredibly positive, absolutely phenomenal community over on Discord. Love all those guys over there. Genuinely, we have a fantastic Discord community. You guys are all great. Thank you so much for being such a great, positive, uplifting Discord community. A lot of Discord there. But in addition to that, we of course have our YouTube channel, which hopefully you are joining us live on right now. But if you are not, if you're listening to the podcast version of the show, then go to youtube.com/allinpodcast, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, get those notifications, and then you can follow. You can actually see our faces. We actually have faces.
We do.
And you can see them. I promise. But after you see our faces, you're going to be like, you know what? Those are the kind of faces that I need to join the Patreon for.
Oh man, I hope so. Patreon.com/allinpodcast is how you can support these two faces. Throw a few bones our way. See what tier works for you. We've got exclusive content, 2 weekly exclusive podcasts that go up there. All kinds of benefits, including discounts on our merch for our Triforce tier supporters. We have got a merch store, bit.ly/allinmerch, if you want to pick up a hat, a mug, a sticker, something to show your love for All In. Throw a few bones our way. We really appreciate that. But if you don't have any bones to throw our way, we understand that too. You can just drop some words entirely for free on Apple Podcasts, Podchaser, and Audible. You can leave us a 5-star written review that I will shout out here on the show. And you can leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify. Help us hit a further milestone on Spotify. We really appreciate that. Very free, very easy way to get our show in front of the people who need to hear it.
Yes, huge thank you to those who did review us this past week. Big thank you to that. Big thank you to all of our amazing patrons and to anybody who has liked, retweeted, shared our content anywhere around the internet to make sure that the message of All In is getting out there. Guys, thank you and namaste.
Namaste, folks. That's been the news. And of course, anybody who's still here, if you haven't already, like the stream. We really appreciate that. Subscribe if you haven't already. And this is just, of course, a piece, but a taste of the full podcast that goes live tomorrow. We've also got it's a very kind of timey-wimey episode going live tomorrow with the top 5
wibbly wobbly
loops. Yeah, the top 5 time loops in Nintendo games. We've also got a interview with the Patrick's Parabox creator, Patrick Trainer, and we've got a retrospective on 15 years of Super Smash Bros. Brawl. So you're not going to want to miss it. That hits the podcast feeds tomorrow, and links to that are always in the video description. But Eric and I actually have to run because we're about to go guest on the Nintendo Pals podcast. So if you guys aren't familiar with them, twitch.tv/Nintendo_pals. In fact, I'll put it here in the chat if anybody wants to kind of follow us over there. We're about to go over and hang out with Andros on the Nintendo Pals podcast. I think we're going to be casting Star Wars characters as Nintendo characters.
We're recasting the Star Wars trilogies, the 3 different Star Wars trilogies, the original trilogy, the prequel trilogy, and the sequel trilogy. We're recasting them with Nintendo characters, apparently. So that ought to be fun.
That ought to be fun. So come hang out with us over there. We'd love to see you, and tune into the podcast tomorrow. And yeah, we love you all very much. Bye-bye.
Have a great weekend, guys.
Ta-da! Bowser says, see you there.